Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar Setting Up in China. Today we will talk about the corporate structures, working space solutions, and much more. Taking the right first step in China will help you ensure a smooth market entry and avoid regulatory obstacles in the long run. In today's session, you will learn whether a WFOE, a wholly foreign-owned enterprise, or a representative office is best suited for your strategy and vision in China. In the second session, you will learn what is important when you choose an office location and which factors should be considered to simplify your employees' life in China. My name is Paula Kornaszewska. I am based in Beijing. In Fiducia, I am responsible for business development. Now I would like to introduce the first speaker, Laura Valesco. Based in Shanghai, Laura is a client services manager in Fiducia's corporate service team in China. She assists clients by designing the best approach for their China investment and advises on the company incorporations and restructuring. Laura relocated to China in 2010, and since then, she has worked in the fields of business administration, management consulting, and corporate services. Our second speaker is Ruth Szymanowski. Ruth is Managing Director of the German Center Beijing, which has been supporting German companies in China with offices, advice, and networks since 1999. Szymanowski has been working in China for 20 years, in several German and international companies and organizations. Her working experience has given her a comprehensive understanding of economic, legal, and cultural conditions in China. Ms. Szymanowski speaks fluent Chinese. Her long-standing experience in German-Chinese business and cooperation made her build up a local network to companies, institutions, and authorities in the country. The webinar will not take longer than an hour, including the Q&A session at the end. Please write your questions in the question panel, and first Laura, then Ruth will address some of them. If we don't address your question during the Q&A session, we will contact you during the week. It is time to start.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Paula, and thank you to all the attendants for joining me in presenting today's topic called Choosing Your China Structure, Should I Set Up a WFOE or a Rep Office? Before we start with today's topic, I would like to mention a few words about our company and what we do. Fiducia supports international companies in China and Hong Kong with a wide range of services. Our team comprises more than 120 experts who are distributed along 4 offices located in Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Hong Kong. For over 35 years, we have helped clients navigate China's complex but promising business landscape by delivering integrated solutions in 2 main categories, which are advisory and outsourcing. Today, we will be focusing on the corporate service part, where we will be sharing insights based on our clients' experience. Through this webinar, we intend to cover 3 main topics. We are going to introduce first the different foreign investment vehicles available for foreign entities in China. Then we will analyze the key differences between those investment vehicles. And afterwards, we are going to list the considerations that investors should take into account prior to entering the Chinese market. To close this session, we are going to share a couple of case studies we have prepared based on the business profile of today's audience. Now, let's begin with the first of our topics, foreign investment vehicles in China. As a foreign enterprise, there are multiple ways to enter the Chinese market. All they have been listed on this slide. But most common solutions include representative offices and limited liability companies. I will go into the types of WFOEs in more detail later on. Now, let me briefly explain each of these investment vehicles. Representative offices. Rep offices are a non-legal entity that represents the parent company overseas. They are usually established to operate as business liaison, as they can't really engage in business activities directly. However, in China, some rep offices can engage in operations in a lawful way, but only in very specific sectors. For example, if let's say a law firm wants to enter China, to operate in China, actually, the only possible way is to set up a rep office of a foreign law firm. Likewise, foreign airlines can only operate in China through representative offices. Limited liability companies are separate legal entities in China. They are called wholly foreign owned entities or WFOEs if the entity is 100% subsidiary of a foreign company. Or they are called joint ventures when there is a partnership between a foreign and a Chinese investor or two foreigners. The main difference between joint ventures and WFOEs is that WFOEs allow investors to have complete control over the business. In general, WFOEs are a much more common structure than joint ventures. However, there are specific situations where investors could be interested in setting up a joint venture. For example, if the foreign investors wants to leverage the market know-how of the Chinese partner. Additionally, there are specific sectors where actually foreign investors can only enter through the setup of a joint venture. However, due to its comparatively higher popularity, today we are going to focus on the WFOE structure. Now, there are three types of WFOEs. They all the same legal identity, but differ in setup costs, estimated timeline for incorporation, and obviously a scope of business activities. The first of these three types are the consulting WFOEs. It's a type of WFOE that actually allows providing services in China. For example, marketing services, accounting services, general consulting services, etc. The second type are trading WFOEs, also known as foreign invested commercial enterprises. Companies under this category can import and export, but also perform wholesale, retail, and franchise operations. And they can also provide related activities or related services, such as after-sales service or technical support. Last but not least are the manufacturing WFOEs. As its own name says, it allowed companies to manufacture, but also to process and assemble, as well as export and import and sell domestically. Of course, these kind of WFOEs can also provide related services, as mentioned before. WFOEs with a manufacturing scope require additional licenses, and as such, setup process usually takes longer. Now, what are the key differences between rep offices and WFOEs that investors should be aware of in order to choose the best structure for their China operations? WFOEs can formally engage in business activities. They can issue Chinese invoices and receive payments in Chinese yuan. WFOEs can also generate profit, and this profit can be converted to foreign currency for funds repatriation. WFOEs can also hire direct employees, and there are no restrictions on the amount of employees that a WFOE can hire. Also, WFOE structure allows the setup of branch offices in other cities in China or in the same city if necessary. And last but not least, WFOEs are the most effective way of protecting technical information and trademark secrets. Just a side note here, registering your trademark in China can also take quite a long time. According to our experience with ongoing projects, estimated timeline is around 12 to 18 months. Now, we advise clients to get started with their trademark registration as early as possible. As a matter of fact, you don't need to have an established WFOE for that. So we usually advise clients to first start registering the trademark registration so that when the WFOE is fully set up, they can really start operations by ensuring that their brands and their products are fully protected. If you have any question regarding trademark registration in China, let us know because we can also help you with this. Now, continuing with the WFOE structure. Disadvantages. I will mention that the setup process is more complex and lengthier as it requires dealing with multiple authorities. On the right side, we are commenting most important features of rep offices in China. And in my opinion, there are three core advantages. First of all, this solution is considered an inexpensive and easy method to enter the market. Since there is no registered capital requirements. So basically, rep offices are financed by the mother company. And setup time is relatively shorter. It usually takes 2 months to complete the registration process. But the list of disadvantages is significantly longer than disadvantages of the office. First of all, rep office structure is often not recommended due to the fact that there are many operational limitations. Only quality control, product promotion, market research, and similar liaison activities are permitted. Rep offices cannot invoice clients, or actually, as a matter of fact, they cannot directly engage in operational activities. Additionally, rep offices cannot hire employees directly. If any employee that has to be hired under the rep office has to be hired through an HR agency, and actually, rep office structure only allows hiring for foreign nationals. And in this regard, you have to take into consideration that Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Macau citizens are considered foreign nationals in China. And last consideration is that the authorities require the mother company to be at least 2 years old in order to allow the creation of a representative offices. As I was mentioning in the previous slide, rep office does not require the capital injection, but WFOE does. The level of investment of a shareholder into a WFOE is commonly called registered capital, and it actually marks the limitation of liability for the WFOE. Many clients ask us about the minimum registered capital. In general terms, there is no minimum registered capital. This was abolished in March 2014. However, the authorities still somehow follow the guidelines previously established as minimum registered capital to approve or reject applications for company setup. Additionally, there are specific industries that do have an official minimum limit. For example, international freight forwarding companies. Basically, the minimum registered capital for these kind of companies depends on the freight forwarding services they would like to provide. Additionally, also capital requirements may vary from locations by different locations and also due to different business scopes. For me, the trickiest part about calculating the registered capital requirements of a company is not that there is a minimum required capital, if applicable. The important thing for investors, for our clients, is actually to be able to understand their cash flow needs, how much money they are going to need until actually they estimate that the company can be self-sustained. Because this capital injection is what is going to be used for daily operations to run the company until really the company can sustain itself. If you register too little capital, this might leave the company short of funds. Obviously, it is possible to inject capital at a later stage, but this is going to be time consuming and it's going to take some time. On the other hand, an overcommitment of capital could mean that you end up in China with unused resources that could be difficult to transfer out of China. For this reason, it is so important to actually try to make an accurate capital estimation for your China business. It is also imperative to understand applicable taxes. Both WFOEs and rep offices in China are subject to a number of different taxes: corporate income tax, VAT, and surtaxes, among others. Interesting part here is that even when rep offices are not allowed to generate profit, they are still exposed to substantial tax burden. Why is this? The reason behind this situation is that the authorities understand that the activities performed by the rep office in China somehow help to increase the worldwide revenue generated by the mother company. For rep offices, the team income is assessed at a rate of 10 to 11% on the total gross amount of overheads incurred by the rep office. In conclusion, so what is the best solution for a foreign investor? To be honest, there is no better or worse solution. It all depends on your project plans for China. Overall, a rep office is usually the recommended structure for companies that are still not 100% sure that the Chinese market is a viable option for them. Whereas a WFOE is more suitable for companies with relatively larger long-term plans for China. However, investors must keep in mind that once deciding to establish a rep office, it is no legally possible to directly switch to other legal structures. Chinese authorities do not allow the investor to transform a rep office into a WFOE. Under these circumstances, companies must go first through the hassle of forming a new WFOE from scratch and then shut down the rep office, which can take up to 18 months. For this reason, and taking into consideration the tax burden that rep offices face in China, our common recommendation for foreign investors is to go directly for a WFOE setup, regardless on whether the company wants to engage directly in sales or not. I would like to talk now about the key requirements for WFOE setup in China. When investors decide to set up a WFOE in China, they should be aware that the following decisions will have to be taken prior to start any filing process with the designated government authorities. The first of these decisions is related to the location of the office space and the lease agreement. To register a WFOE or a rep office in China, it is necessary to own or lease office space. In China, office address cannot be shared, which means that only one company can be registered with a specific office address. The lease agreement should be signed before submitting any application for incorporation, and usual rental period shall be at least 12 months. An initial solution we usually recommend our clients is to actually choose business centers, especially at the beginning, because they really provide expansion options for future considerations. The next point of consideration could be the business scope. Every company in China has an approved business scope and can only operate within this scope of activities. If you want to extend the activities of your company at a later stage, it is possible only after prior approval by the authorities. That is why it is so important to really have very clear idea of which activities you would like to perform in China, and ensure that all those activities are going to be included in the business scope of your future entity. The registered capital. As I previously mentioned, the registered capital is the amount that is required to run the business until the company can be self-sustained. There are two important things to note in this regard. First of all, registered capital does not have to be transferred upfront. However, the payment terms have to be detailed in the Articles of Association, which will be drafted during the company setup, and the company shall comply with this time limitation. Second, capital injections are tax-free, which means that investors shall see the capital contribution as a complementary way of financing its China business. Any other way of financing the Chinese operations is going to have applicable related costs in terms of, in general terms of taxes. Corporate functions. There are several positions to appoint within a WFOE structure. However, among this structure, the most important one is the legal representative, who is actually the person representing the company in all official matters. This person does not need to live in China, but actually his personal presence is required sometimes, for example, when opening the company's bank account or when actually applying for specific concessions within the tax office. And last, import and export registration. Each company that intends to conduct trading and distribution activities in China must obtain an import and export license, which is issued by the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. The whole application process, including additional administrative steps, usually takes around 5 weeks. That is the reason why setting up a trading WFOE takes slightly longer than setting up a consulting one. Additionally, there are certain product categories that have higher safety requirements and as such require additional registration. For example, hazardous chemicals or food products such as poultry or wine. Now, we are going to enter now into the practical part of today's webinar, which are the case studies. As I said, we have chosen these two topics based on the profiles of today's participants. First of our case studies is related to the retail industry. How can I run retail operations in China? Opening a retail store requires the investor to first set up a trading WFOE. Obviously, the business scope of this WFOE shall include all the products that the company aims to sell in China. Once the WFOE or the company is fully registered, the WFOE or the investor should set up a retail branch. This procedure usually takes around 2 months. The branch will also have a registered address. In this case, the address will be located in a commercial space. Retail stores are not required to have registered capital as they could be dependent on the WFOE. In this consideration, it is important to remark that branch offices are not considered legal entities in China. A branch office has the same legal identity as its parent company. In this slide, actually, you can see how the group will be structured when a company intends to actually provide retail services in China. The second case study we would like to mention today, it's related to manufacturing WFOEs. And we have chosen this topic because it also has impacted, recent regulation has also impacted the situation of some of our clients. When setting up a manufacturing WFOE, there are a couple of extra administrative steps and requirements involved in the licensing process. One which is worth pointing out is the environmental impact assessment report. We bring this up because since 2017, China's environmental regulation has been getting much tougher across the board. On this slide, you can see how environmental fines and inspection have increased for manufacturers in the Shanghai area in the last 3 years. Our clients have also reported that it is tougher to get the approval from the environmental authority, especially if the manufacturing site is close to China's biggest cities. The reason behind this is the current battle of the government to reduce pollution levels. So, two advices to bear in mind if you plan to set up a manufacturing WFOE. First, choose your location strategically. As I just said, setting up factories near big cities is nowadays much harder than before. And second, make sure that your environmental impact assessment report is accurate. One of our clients has recently encountered problems because the environmental impact assessment report was understating the amount of hazardous waste that they will be emitting, which later on got them into trouble because the actual emissions will always exceed this quota.
Hello everybody, welcome to the second presentation in today's webinar. In the upcoming 15 minutes, I will give you an overview of China's current economic situation, focusing on how to set up or expand your business in China and how to find the perfect location for your offices. My presentation has 5 points. I will start with a general overview and milestones of the current year 2018 and then go ahead to elaborate on the two most important initiatives. The third part is about digital trends in China, followed by an analysis. And the last part is an introduction to the German center, Beijing. I have lived in China for 20 years, and it's a big challenge to limit myself and wrap up the current situation in just a couple of words, but here we go. If you take a closer look, you'll see there are a couple of major focus points, including the healthcare reformation, the economic reconstruction, coming from a productive economy, turning it into a consumer-driven and innovation-driven economy. China wants to continue fighting against environmental pollution, fighting against corruption, upgrading the national defense system. The Chinese government is pushing forward the Belt and Road Initiative, which was announced in 2013, and another major initiative called Made in China 2025. If you look at the national growth, we're coming from a very strong year 2017. Growth rates around 6.5% is what we call the new normal, which has continued over the past 2 or 3 years. And even though there has been a backdrop maybe the last couple of months due to the US-China trade conflict, I'm sure we will end the year 2018 just fine. So let's take a look back. What are the milestones of year 2018? In January, the tariff announcement by the US on solar panels, for which China was the main distributor, was kind of the kickoff of the still ongoing trade conflict. Another very important milestone took place on the 13th March with the 13th National People Congress removing the term limits on general secretaries. This means President Xi Jinping is as powerful as ever and has the possibility of being re-elected. Setting another important milestone, showing that China is indeed capable of transforming its economy, is the launching of the 3B rocket in their lunar mission. The China-African Cooperation Summit in September not only gave Beijing blue skies for a couple of days, but it gathered over 50 African prime ministers in Beijing to further support the African-China economic exchange. In terms of anti-corruption, you can actually read weekly about successes of the Chinese authorities tracking down corrupt officials. In October, even the famous actress Fan Bingbing was fined, and shortly afterwards, the Interpol chief Meng Hongwei was arrested. The Belt and Road Initiative is about gaining market access and shares, securing trade routes and energy supplies, as well as exporting Chinese industrial overcapacities to faraway construction projects and to create demand for Chinese businesses and products. It also supports China in achieving the geopolitical goal of having more influence. According to the German think tank, the Mercator Institute of China Studies in Berlin, China has invested over $25 billion into Belt and Road Initiative related infrastructure projects up to date. The initiative is not only about reviving the Silk Road, it goes way beyond. You have a maritime road, economic corridors, and you have activities that span over the whole globe. And to be honest, it is shaking up the world. The second very important initiative that's supported by the Xi administration is Made in China 2025. Its ultimate goal is to lead China to be the world's leading industry nation in 2049, which is the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Republic of China. As you can see, there are 10 key areas. One of them is modern information technologies, aerospace, and new energy vehicles. China is concentrating on robotics, renewable energies, new materials, and in reforming its agricultural sector. If you allow me, let me give you a German perspective on this initiative. Made in China 2025 actually means there's a great demand for German technology and German equipment. On the other hand, China is getting ready to be a very successful competitor for German technology and products. So currently, Made in China 2025 is very supportive for the German business in China. But Germany has to put a lot of effort to keep its competitive advantage of being a high innovative country. For me personally, the most fascinating development in China has been the rapid digitalization. If you look at my illustration, you will find the three internet giants Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent. Our daily lives are managed by these three companies. In China, social media has their own ecosystem, but I am sure that Alibaba, Tencent, and Baidu and their affiliated social media services and companies are also well known to foreigners living abroad. The big three have global ambitions, and then they have been able to show that they are creating more and more function that will revolutionize our digital living. In order to be a little bit more specific, I want to show this slide about the WeChat app. We call it the all-rounder. If you want to go by train, you want to search for a cinema, you want to pay, or you want to chat with friends and share moments, it's all done by WeChat. It's a very powerful and inclusive app. And statistics show that on any single day, the users spend an average of 6 hours using WeChat. A very useful analysis of the Chinese economy is provided by the German Trade and Investment. They release a SWOT analysis every year, and although German SME in China might face some threats and challenges, there are a lot of opportunities and strengths. One of them is the large and growing domestic market. China has an increased consumer base. Over 300 million people in China are considered to belong to the middle class. Made in China 2025 is considered to be a big opportunity. Switching their economy from low-tech to high-tech will lead to an increase in the demand for high-end products coming from Europe. Researchers are certain that China will continue to foster innovation, research and development, and that the companies that are used to develop and create for the Chinese market will be more and more able to do innovation for their global customer base. If you run business here in China, you have to keep an eye on the ever-changing regulations. We do have a stable political environment, but we also have new regulations coming up on a weekly basis. So it's important that you keep up with the ever-changing administrative rules. The Chinese government is implementing programs to increase the foreign direct investments and setting up new companies in China, especially in the free trade zones and the development areas. China has the dynamics we miss in Europe. China has the optimism we have long lost. And if you're smart, I am sure you can be very successful with your business in China. This slide will give you an orientation on how to find the best business place and what to consider. Of course, it's about the budget. Depending on how much money you have to spend, you can think of different solutions. So one of your first decisions will probably be about the location. Choosing between a first-tier city like Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, or a second-tier city where the price is generally lower and the local government has certain incentives for you to set up their business there. But it's not about location alone and price alone. Think about what kind of office do you want to set up? Is it a sales office? Are you looking for a place for your service team? Is your office supposed to be the headquarters? Are you looking into setting up a factory, a warehouse? So it's also about infrastructure. How are your employees going to get to work? Do they have restaurants nearby? Can they easily drop off their children before they get to work? You have to think about the building. What kind of building am I moving into? What kind of IT infrastructure does it provide? Heating, cooling, water. In my opinion, it has become more important for companies to provide the right working environment for their employees. And this is where the German Center Beijing steps in. We belong to a network of 6 German centers worldwide. The first one founded in Singapore by the Landesbank Baden-Württemberg LBBW. Following that, we opened new German centers in Beijing, Moscow, and Mexico. And the Bayern Bank invested in Shanghai as well as in Taicang. We offer companies offices, consulting, and network in growth regions worldwide. The German Center Beijing is located right in the heart of the German community in Beijing. We run 2 office towers with over 20,000 square meters and have more than 125 companies as our tenants. Apart from providing modern offices, we give outside experts and our tenants within our business center a perfect platform to present their expertise. As a tenant of the German Center, you can make use of our digital advertising opportunities and attractive corporate rates. You can even make your Chinese driving license at the German Center Beijing. Once you become a member of the German Center community, you will be surprised by the diverse neighborhood. We have more than 125 companies as tenants. Most of them German SMEs from a wide range of industries. We choose a different topic every week to organize a workshop and help you benefit from their expertise and know-how. Help you connect. So, time is up. It was great to share my insights with you. You can find my contact details on this slide. I wish you all your best for your China business. 一切顺利，恭喜发财！
Thank you very much, ladies, for this great insight about the business in China. Now we're going to move to the Q&A session. First, Laura will answer the question about the corporate structures.
There have been multiple questions sent through our chat function. Due to time restrictions, I have selected one question that I believe could be relevant for the majority of today's audience. This question comes from Alex, who is asking about business scopes in China. His question is as follows. You mentioned during the presentation that it is possible to change the business scope, but this update has to obtain approval from the authorities. I would like to know how difficult this is and how long this process takes. Correct. The business scope defines which type of business a company can engage in. In general terms, there are 3 types of general scopes, which I mentioned during the presentation. The first of them is consulting, the second is trading, and the last is manufacturing. Each type of scope, or general scopes in this case, has different requirements. For instance, a trading company needs to obtain an import and export license to perform trading activities, whilst, for example, a manufacturing WFOE needs to be registered at the factory space instead of an office space. Companies cannot perform out of their business scope, and any change or update they would like to perform has to be approved by 2 different authorities, which are the Administration for Industry and Commerce, AIC, and the MOFCON, Ministry of Commerce. The application should be submitted together with a shareholder resolution and the definition of the new business scope. Once these 2 authorities approve this application, companies should apply for additional licenses, if this is applicable, for example, in the case of the trading company, and update this information with the bank and the tax office. Obviously, depending on the specific revisions a company would like to make, the overall process can carry on for months. Normally, if the changes do not involve applying for additional licenses, I will say that this application might take around 2 months.
Thank you very much, Laura. And now Ruth will answer 2 more questions. The first one was sent by Stefan. What are the advantages of being located in Beijing?
Good question. Of course, it depends upon the business you're looking at, if you are planning on establishing your headquarters or if you want to have a service unit here in Beijing. But obviously, Beijing is the capital. So if you set up your office here, you'll be close to decision makers. Being in Beijing will enable you not only to be in China, but to be actually at the center of the global development. You will be able to tap into the global developments where Chinese companies are involved, where the Chinese government is pushing. I think Beijing really has this excellent source of information about what's going to happen in future. It makes you able to tap into the excellent pool of young Chinese university students. The universities in Beijing are the best, not only in China, but actually they rank very high in the whole world. We have a very international research community. If you look at the startups, the unicorns, 6 out of 10 of the last year were actually located in Beijing.
And the second question is, what will be the biggest challenges in China in 2019?
As I said earlier in my presentation, China is constantly announcing new regulations. For example, we don't know what the cybersecurity law actually means specifically for the companies. I mean, we all digitalize, the companies rely more and more on IT. But if you work in China and with China, you will probably have to develop a specific IT solution for your company. This will be a challenge for many small and medium-sized enterprises that doesn't have a big IT department within their company. Another aspect, I think, which will determine the outcomes of 2019 is how the relationship between the US and China will develop. Because China definitely is strongly connected to the global economy. So if we have a setback in the global economy, it will definitely also impact China.
Thank you everyone for participating. If you have any specific questions or would like to learn more of how to enter and become successful in the Chinese market, please contact Laura or Ruth or myself. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you once again. Bye.